Let's discuss King Henry's 6 wives. King Henry's many wives. His first wife was Catherine of Aragon. Catherine came to England from Spain to marry Henry's elder brother, Arthur. A year later, Arthur died, and Catherine became engaged to Henry. Catherine and Henry got married in May of 1509, which was when Henry became king. They had 6 children together, but only one, Mary, survived. As Henry got older, he became desperate for a son who would become king after he died. After 23 years of marriage, Henry decided to divorce Catherine so that he could marry someone else. After the divorce, in January 1533, Catherine of Aragon was sent to the countryside, where she lived comfortably and quietly until she died 3 years later. Though she was comfortable, she did live with a degree of disgrace and shame. Wife number 2, Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn came to the court of King Henry VIII in 1526. She was clever and educated, and Henry fell in love with her. Henry married Anne in January of 1533, straight after his divorce from Catherine. Later that same year, Anne gave birth to a daughter, whom they called Elizabeth. Because the baby was not a boy, Henry was very angry and disappointed. 2 years later, Anne became pregnant again, but the baby boy died. Henry decided to get rid of Anne. He said she was a witch, and she was imprisoned in the Tower of London. She was also accused of adultery, probably to get rid of political opponents. 3 months later, on 19th of May in 1536, she was executed after being queen for only 3 years. Where was Henry during her execution? Well, he was playing a round of tennis. Wife number 3, Jane Seymour. Jane Seymour had been a lady-in-waiting to both Catherine of Aragon and Anne Boleyn. On the 30th of May, 1536, only 11 days after Anne had her head chopped off, Henry married Jane. The following year, Jane gave birth to a son called Edward, the longed-for heir to the throne. Henry was very pleased. Unfortunately, Jane was very poorly after the birth, and she died not long afterwards, on the 12th of October in 1537. Henry was very upset and put on even more weight. She had been queen for only 1 year and was Henry's only wife to receive a queen's funeral. Wife number 4, Anne of Cleves. Henry fell in love with a portrait of Anne, but he had never met her. But he agreed that she should come from Germany so he could marry her. The painting was not a real likeness, and Anne was so ugly that when Henry first saw her, he said she had a face like a horse. Henry had to go through with the marriage, as he had already promised her father. They were married in January of 1540, but he divorced Anne later the same year, giving her a very good pension. Basically, he paid her a lot of money for the divorce, and she was happy to divorce him as well, as she also thought he was very ugly. She lived comfortably on the king's grounds and had her own house. She was kindly referred to as the king's sister for the remainder of her life. The king's 5th wife, Catherine Howard. Henry married Catherine Howard after he had divorced Anne of Cleves. Their marriage lasted for just over a year. Catherine was very pretty and full of fun. She was also very young. In 1541, she was accused of having boyfriends before she was married. Then she was accused of having boyfriends after she was married. She was charged with treason and was beheaded on 13th of February, 1542. Wife number 6, Catherine Parr. She had already lost 2 husbands by the time she married Henry in 1543. Catherine had no children of her own, but she was noted for her kindness to her 3 stepchildren, Mary, Elizabeth, and Edward. During their marriage, Henry became sick. Oh, that word should say sick. And his wife nursed him. Henry became worse and died in 1547. Henry and Catherine were still married when he died. Later that year, Catherine got married again for the 4th time, but she died the following year. Brain check. What were the motivations for the Reformation to take place in England? Why did King Henry VIII become Protestant? What religious beliefs did King Henry's son have? What were Mary's religious beliefs? And what were Elizabeth's religious beliefs? Now, there's something else I would like for you to think about. You need to remember what happened to King Henry's 6 wives. There is a little rhyme that you can use to help. Divorced, beheaded, and died. Divorced, beheaded, survived. This is a rhyme that is very helpful for remembering what happened to his 6 wives.